Hello, and thank you for joining us on this webinar. My name is Bruce Bignell, and I'll be your host, mediator, and curious salesperson for today. I own and run the technology consultancy Evolve, where we specialize in helping SMEs and scale-ups get the most out of their pipe drive with streamlined workflows and technology integrations like Oneflow. On our panel today, discussing the evolution of the sales rep, we have Zara Ajiva, the sales manager of EMEA and LATAM at Pipedrive. Zara has been with Pipedrive since March 2020, so has seen a lot of change during her time there, not just COVID and having to adjust to managing sales targets and a team remotely, but also having been involved in Pipedrive as they raised $750 million in November 2020. Zara has some great experience as an individual sales contributor and a sales manager over the last 8 years or so in SaaS and has great experience in the travel industry. We're also joined by Axel Higeland, from the Chief Sales Officer at Oneflow. Axel has been at the hyper-growth company Oneflow since May 2020. So again, seen a lot of change during his time there, not just COVID, but Axel was also instrumental in helping the business grow and has recently seen Oneflow raise $37 million in April 2020 in a Swedish IPO. Axel has worn many hats since 2001 across multiple departments and companies. He has experience as an individual sales contributor, a sales director, and head of operations, and now Chief Sales Officer at Oneflow, managing 30 plus sales reps in soon to be 6 countries. I'm very, very much looking forward to go through this topic, the evolution of a sales rep, with a pair and extract as much experience, knowledge, and stories as possible, with the main aim of being educational and entertaining for you. We also have some live polls going on throughout, so please do keep an eye out for those and share your thoughts throughout. So, the evolution of a sales rep, from annoying to advisor. We can all agree that sales has, or used to have, a negative ring to it. Society, movies, personal experiences have all cultivated this annoying stereotype that you try to get away from no matter what. So, for example, picture the car salesman in a suit, talking loudly and aggressively, pushing for the sale. Or the Wolf of Wall Street, where you have the story of Jordan Belfort selling worthless penny stock in order to make himself rich. But there's been a shift. I think we've all felt this in the last couple of years, not only in the customer journey, they're way more informed than you think, but also in how prospects are being treated, how candidates themselves view a sales job. Think of the rise of SDRs and RevOps and the SDR rock stars in the last 2 or 3 years. Nowhere is this more noticeable than in modern day B2B sales environment, where we have changes in buying patterns, changes in behavior, mean that salespeople continuously must evolve or risk being forgotten about. So my first question, Axel, what do you think has caused this big shift from annoying to advisor?
Hi, Bruce. Good to see you. Well, I don't think there's any right answer here, so I'm just going to share my 2 cents on this. And my first cent is about something you touched upon now, that we have to go back in time to when I was a kid. A few years back, I remember I was at home and the doorbell was ringing, and I opened the door and there was this strange man with a machine. And I was like, "Hi, what do you want?" And, "Hi, can I speak to your mother?" And I said, "Of course." And I let him in the house. And I yelled for my mother, and she came. And she looked at me really angry. And it turns out that this guy was a vacuum cleaner salesman. And he insisted on demonstrating his product, the vacuum cleaner, by cleaning the floors and also the curtains. And he wanted to blow dry my mother's hair. At that point, she threw him out. And she mumbled, "Damn salesman." And this is, I don't think our younger viewers have experienced this at all. It's been a while since I've seen it, but we also know that from way back you had traveling salesmen, when you have this cliche of the coat, you open all the watches you sell, all those kind of sales professions that have kind of gone out of time. And the car salesman, as you mentioned as well, is a good example, because back when I was a kid again, you came to you drove around the car dealership, and they pitched your head off until you bought a car at some point. And now 95% of people who buy a car start online, and many, and increasingly many, they finish online as well. So there's a big shift there, and taking away those two extreme kinds of sales, not the two, but all those more extreme kind of salespeople, has removed one perception of salespeople. And the second cent of my 2 cents is what you also mentioned, the digital revolution. Because when that happened, and especially in B2B tech, which my background is from, so that's where I will focus, we are not, our role as salespeople is as incremental as before, but now we're advisors, we're more guides to guide them through this jungle of products. And that takes a lot of different things from us as salespeople than what they used to. Because this vacuum cleaner or a car salesman way back, they had to have charm and persistence, to put it like really simply. Now you need to be a great project leader. You need to be business savvy, and you need to have brains. So the people who work in sales now are very, very different because they need to be different. So those two elements has been going in parallel, right? So remove the most annoying or most extreme sales professions, and the sales professions that have occurred will demand much more from us.
Yeah.
And if you put like icing on this cake, the fact that many of the richest people in the world are tech billionaires now, and who doesn't want a piece of that cake, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what you think, Laura.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Do you think? What's your third sense on that, Zara?
Thank you, Bruce. So I agree with what Axel was mentioning, the shift from the moment that we have the car salesman versus the person that knocks on your door and they want to show the product and really demonstrate in person for someone else to see the value. And now in B2B tech, we see such big change in the way that sales is actually handling customers. But one of the things that you've mentioned, Bruce, is the negative ring that sales still has or used to have. For me and my experience over the last few years, I can connect both of Axel's experience versus what is happening now. And I can still find a little bit of the negative ring that sales has. How are we finding that negative side is how departments envision sales. So let's say if you have an amazing product right now in tech, everyone will believe that the product is self-served, for example. So why have a sales department? So why need them? And in certain cases, some companies still don't feel that the sales department needs to be that value because customers will definitely learn the product itself. But then we have the experience that, no, we need to educate customers and we need to explain a little bit the shift that right now is happening. So you still feel around the bit of sales being changing over the last few years, but also still having a negative ring. Then you have examples of companies that set targets so high that account executives, sales reps don't achieve them. So it also has a negative ring to that. So evolving and being part of companies that are really pushing for sales departments, account executives, SDRs, BDRs, a lot of the new roles that came in is really important. I remember in my experience in the hiring processes, having account executives really, really interested in learning more about our company, about how sales does our jobs. But their concern was, is this really a serious company that will set targets and will set myself to succeed instead of companies that still have that notion that, no, sales, we can put as much as we want. If the sales account executive doesn't reach those targets, it's fine. So you have a lot of sites on how you can move along sales, but you still need to develop certain areas around certain companies, of course.
Yeah, I think that's thank you for that, Zara. I think that's a really good point. So in terms of developing certain other elements, right? So if we had the door-to-door salesperson, and now we've got this, they need to be more well-rounded as a person. They can't just be the charming person that's knocking on the door and being persuasive, which kind of leads me to my next question, actually. So if we had cold calling, right? So if we've got an annoying salesperson, what are some of those connotations why people hate the salesperson? And it might be because of the cold calls, right? However, according to a Rain Group study, 82% of buyers accept meetings with a seller who reaches out to them by phone. So there's a bit of a contradiction there, right? So if we're all saying that they're annoying, but but the effectiveness is still there, right? Based on that research. So Zara, I'll start with you. What do you think about that? Like, where does the old-fashioned cold call fit in this kind of mix from a B2B sales environment?
I think it's how you communicate with customers and the way you are doing. I remember a few years back, we had our KPIs and we were putting KPIs into teams for the number of calls that they were doing for that customer. So what is the average that we are putting for each customer? And that is really important. If we get to the point that we are calling 5 times in an hour or 30 minutes to the same customer, then we will be the advisor annoying. But if we've set specific cadences and work with different departments like marketing, and we set structures in ways that we are giving the value to the customer of speaking with sales departments, we will see the change. I think it's really relevant because customers still want to hear from sales departments. They still want to hear from sales reps, account executives. They have doubts. That's why they are booking. And we have that poll that basically shows that they still want to learn from us. They still want to have meetings. But it's how we are doing and the cadence of communication that we have for those customers. It's understanding when to call, how to call, email, really important for customers. And one of the things that we also understand is if we spam customers, then not only you're hurting your targets, but also you're hurting the company's branding, because the likelihood of getting your emails being delivered to your customers will decrease. So you need to be mindful of the actions that you're taking. And most of all is understanding your customer journey. So understanding the first 24 hours, how are customers engaging with your platform, your product, your tool, then understanding along the way, what are they doing? Are they still using? Have they stopped? What is the product usage that your customers have? I think while you understand this and setting specific cadences so that you don't overcall, you don't over email, is really important to stop the notion that sales is from annoying, but we rather want them to perceive us as experts on the matter, and we will help them more than we will hurt them by over calling and over communicating.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, Axel, what would you say on that? How have you seen those cadences change, right? So, you since 2001, you've been in this kind of space. So email would have been a big thing, calling. So have you seen these cadences change, and has technology helped or hindered people in that regard?
Yeah, it absolutely has changed. But first of all, Oneflow, the company I work for, we have been growing between 75 and 100% for many years now, and we have done that by cold calling mainly. So it's definitely not dead. And now we are approaching new markets, and we have been doing a lot of research with other companies, much more established and bigger companies than ours, to find out that do we do this in this market as well? Do we still do cold calling here? Because we hear rumors that people don't cold call anymore, but they do. Yeah. So that is so true. Cold calling isn't dead. And as you say, Zara, this is connected to what I said earlier, because now we're more advisors. So people have also gotten used to that. So when a salesperson reaches out to you, and if the product is relevant, you will be, kind of interesting to talk with the person because he's not annoying. He's knowledgeable and can help guide you through this jungle that I mentioned. And with all the tech support we have today, from prospecting to sales automation, you will also be able to choose a better, you will choose your prospect better, more wisely. So the chances that you actually reach a prospect that is interested in your product is higher than before, which also kind of removes a little bit of people's annoyance towards cold calling. And when it comes to the cadence and how we work now, it's totally different than before. Yeah. When I started out back in the early 2000s, we only used the phone. I remember I was a sales rep and I got the letter S. So start calling on SA something. And when I was done, I asked my manager, what should I do now? No, you go back from SA.
Yeah.
And I called and I called and I called and I called almost every company, you know. And today we don't do that. We have a mix of channels through which we communicate with the customers, and we also pick those customers quite wisely.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely changed, but cold calling is not dead, and I don't think it will die anytime soon.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point in terms of I don't think there's another tool where you can actually, whether it's phone, whether it's texting, whatever that kind of medium is. I don't know if there's any other. You're on the phone. If you can pique their interest while you've got their attention, there's no better way of doing that than on the phone, right? So, brilliant. So, I'm actually going to put a poll to the audience now. So I have 60 seconds with that. So we've heard from the guys here, cold calling is not dead. If we can put a 60-second timer on this. So what is your main sales channel today? This is for the audience. So what is your main sales channel today? Is it phone? Is it email? If it's others, please put it in the chat. We'll just let these come through. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting point. I mean, I speak to people all the time, some from our kind of sales side where we help businesses. Some people are so anti-phone. They think it's they think it's beyond them, or whether they think it doesn't work. I actually put that down to a lot of maybe their previous experience of bad salespeople, right? So we kind of touched upon this earlier about why do we have that bad taste in our mouth with salespeople? I blame terrible salespeople, because that's where that cultural norm of just kind of pushing the sale, instead of being inquisitive, asking a question, understanding, go back to some principles of selling, right? So spin selling, identify the problem, and then if there's a need, and then you jump in there. Anyway, we can keep talking on that a bit later. So the polls come in. Over 50% are still using email as their main sales channel. Interesting, right? So maybe it might be more skewed because of the B2B environment from a software space. I might challenge that and say that actually you're more prospecting there versus doing the end sale. However, there is a dependent piece there. You might have a self-serve. So, but yeah, what I would say is do not negate using a. I wouldn't completely forget using cold calling in your mix. So, coming into companies investing in omni-channel experiences have skyrocketed from 20% to 80%. So just as sales cycles have a hybrid model, the buyer journey now has a new model as well, right? For the buyer experience. So there are so many touch points, physical and digital, that a buyer might go through before making a purchase. There's some research from Forrester that are saying there's at least 10 touch points that can occur during this buying sequence. So 10 touch points can come across a variety of channels. That could be text messages, it could be emails, could be ad spend, or something like this. So this is for you, Axel, here. Whether it's 10 or less, how can we influence that buyer journey in B2B?
Well, from a strategic standpoint in B2B sales, I would say it's like two main things. One thing is to invest in sales automation. That will, because there's a lot of channels we need to use. We need to communicate the right message at the right time to the right person. And to do that without having tech support is a mess, basically. So, and we are implementing sales automation now. So we have actually managed to do that in a way, but, it has not been optimal. But now we're going to get that support. And when you have then you can, you can mix, you can jump between LinkedIn and emails and phone calls and try to present your prospect with relevant information that we think that he would or she would need at that point in the process. So that's like one thing I would recommend. The other thing is a stellar marketing department, because we know that a lot of the buying process happens at like 80% or something. I don't remember the exact percentage, but the bigger part of the sales process happens without us involved. It's the customer doing his own research, and that research needs to come from we need to produce something for his research, and that is establishing great content, relevant content, and putting it out there where the customer will find it, and that takes a great marketing department. And of course, the combination of these two, the working closer together, sales and marketing, those are the two main issues I think you should address.
Yeah, I mean, what would you say on that there, Zara? I mean, is it, and who should take responsibility there? Should that be coming from the sales department saying, hey, marketing, we've got these guys that are, we know it's the right ideal customer profile, we want to go after these? Or is it a marketing led and then sales kind of do the finishing? What do you say that who should be leading that?
I think it should be a collaboration. So I would present a third scenario in what you're asking, because I think mainly the problems come from one needs to take the lead. But before that, if you have collaboration, if you have a good syncing between what marketing actions should come versus what is actually happening, then you're going to achieve a better journey in terms of the customers you're getting. So I honestly believe it's not one depending on the other, it's rather both working together. And what Axel was mentioning, I think it's wonderful, and I do agree. One of the things that we also understand to be really positive when we are talking about customer journeys is presenting what other customers have felt after they bought each product. So having case studies, having experience, testimonials, reviews of your product, really putting into description of how you can use and how you can be more efficient, be better at your own company, that will make also a change that can help on this new journey that you are creating for customers. And then it's also about you evolving and being willing to develop better strategies. So always being a little bit on your toes and experiment what you are doing for your customers. So testing whether if it's your website, how can you improve it? What is the journey after a customer is testing your product or is in the process of actually buying? So really put some workshops within your company to understand, are you doing the best? And what would you bring it more? So involving all departments so that you have different visions, because in sales, you're super connected to what you need to sell. Yeah. Then marketing is actions, what they can bring. Product, they are super in their world of we are developing certain services. So putting everyone together and trying to understand how can we improve our journeys and do it frequently, because we are in tech and tech is constantly changing. So I would say those would be my advices when talking about journeys and how to improve in B2B, for example.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And I think it all builds onto that, the element of if the more educated buyer, we basically need to reassure them. So however they're doing that internally, that they might have to pitch that to their internal stakeholders to get the budget. They might have to pitch it to their wider team. It might be an aspiring salesperson going to their sales manager saying, hey, we need this tech to allow us to reach these goals. So everything you've said around there, both of you really kind of pushed us towards, it's not just sales and it's not just marketing, it's kind of that blended approach. And then that allows us to create better content for the reassure the buyer on their side. So yeah, thank you for that. That was a very, very good. But that kind of leads me onto this other piece, right? So if we're creating this content and kind of helping to reassure the buyer, what does this mean for the salesperson? Because wasn't there this whole piece of a salesperson should always be closing? You know, that ABC, that there's all the memes of get on the phone, get on the phone, get on the phone, push, 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 push. What does that mean to this sale, right? So if we're talking about the sales rep moving from annoying to an advisor role, do you agree that the ABC mantra is a thing of the past? I'll put that to you, Axel, to start that off. Is that a thing of the past? What should we?
I would say so. Same job as I referred to earlier when I got S. as prospects, we had actually always be closing on a banner on the wall.
Okay.
This was a analytics company. We did not sell vacuum cleaners. It was like it's a good thing. But yeah, the evolvement of sales have definitely changed this mantra. Since now it's the sales process influenced by technology, community, personalization, and everything we just spoke of. We need to be quite subtle and find out when to close, because the customer needs to have gone through a certain process, and the bigger the customer or the bigger the process, there's a lot of stakeholders involved. And if we start closing too early in these processes, we might lose that client, because that's not how things work anymore. So always be helping is kind of the new mantra, which I believe in to a large extent. But we should not forget that we should also be closing, but not always. Right? Well, because there are a lot of salespeople out there now that's like, oh, now we're advisors, we're guides.
So I'm just going to capture that point, right? And I just want to ask Zara what you think about that, because there's that you need to have a great relationship in order to be a good salesperson, right? So that advisor is that person that you get along with. I don't think that's the best. Is that the best way to make a sale and or be the most effective? You've got the challenger sale, or the challenger buyer, the challenger customer. What they found was it was actually the one that inspired change, right? The one that challenged, so made them think differently. So I know you may have been going off some there, Axel, but what do you think about that, Zara, in terms of the helping piece, and can you be too much of a helper and not kind of what's your kind of flavor there?
Yeah, I think it's being the advisor. It's really important, and I think it's one of the biggest shifts in which we saw in terms of the salesman. Because if we look back, we were used to a type of salesman that would talk nonstop about a product, a service, whatever it was, wouldn't give any time to the customer to mention exactly the needs of that customer, and probably the selling would be closed, but the customer would probably don't see any benefit and would possibly churn. And I think that is one of the biggest concerns right now that we have in companies, that not only you want to sell from the first moment, but we also want to keep that customer and understand the value. So that's why I think the advisor part is really important. The active listening, the coaching, so that customers understand how they can use on a long haul what they are buying. So it's part of there's something that I say that is shut up and listen. And it's really important, because you're going to listen to the customer initially, and then you're going to show the benefit, and you're going to ask some questions that can explain exactly how you can lead this customer to a successful buyer. And this is, you start as an advisor, but you're also asking questions in the back end, because you'll know how to drive it to a conversion into a sell. So it's the 50-50 of really showing the value versus having soft skills that will lead you into one that basically win that customer and that company or who you are selling.
So nice, thank you. I'm going to push both of you, and I'll push this back. So, does always be closing? Does it change at the end of the month or end of the quarter? Axel?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If I ever utter that sentence, that would be the end of the quarter.
Yeah.
But hey, let's be honest. Some salespeople are really good closers. Some people are not good closers, but both can be equally good at running the process. So sometimes they need a little push to actually ask for the signature, the digital signature, that is.
Yeah, well, that's it, right? It's a changing tech landscape.
So I have a different experience from Axel. So we don't do by quarters, for example. We do it monthly targets. So it also drives us and pushes to always be selling. Of course, it's the 50-50 part, right? But It's in the sense that we are not dependent on the third month. We always need to be on our toes because, of course, we have a visual of what will the quarter bring, the end of the year bring, and what we need to deliver. But because we are doing it on a monthly basis, it also gives us the perception. Also, seasonality comes into place depending on the company. So for us, it's the experience of on a monthly rather than quarterly, for example.
Yeah, and actually, what both of your experiences now, you're in this hyper growth mode, right? So it might be very different for different companies, but yeah, that's a very, very good point. There's something I wanted to mention here, and that is, I'm just going to bring this over to me. Bear with me. We're using a new sales webinar piece here. So with buyers being more educated and demanding, which means there'll be more leverage than ever before, right? So. And what we just said there about whether it's monthly targets, whether it's quarterly targets, there are changes in the way salespeople are working, and whether that's individuals or managers, and the way that performance is managed. And this could render traditional commission plans obsolete. I know there's been a lot of talk on LinkedIn and things recently. So this is another poll I'm going to put live in a moment. What are your thoughts on this? Like, has the commission error changed, and has it seen the best days? How do we, and I'll put this live as I keep talking over this, because I do keep talking, bear with me. Poll 2. So has the commission error seen its best days? I guess what we're trying to say with that is that commission driven only salespeople, and we might there's a piece there. So has commission error seen its best days? Let's get your thoughts on that. Whether commission structure should be more 50-50 from the base salary. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what people think there. Just as it's coming through, I mean, what do you think there, Zara, in terms of? I actually didn't know Pipedrive had a monthly sales kind of target. So is it more commission driven, or are you more as a team guided, like the whole success of the team? What's the kind of split there?
So you have both. You have the individual contributor success, and then you have the team. Of course, we focus more on the team success to see how we are in terms of result. But it's based in terms of commission. What we are doing is considering individual and paying based on performance individually, rather than looking at the whole, because we currently work with different markets. We have different approaches according to different markets. Of course, as a company, we are stronger in different markets. Yeah. So we want to make sure that individually they still have the motivation to succeed, of course. And market-wise, we still have a way to compare and improve our targets and our approaches. As for the question, commission era has seen its best days. I agree. I think if we look way back, we had salespeople working commission only. So we had people that basically what they were closing, it was what they were bringing home. Yeah. Then you had cases in which you would only take a percentage of the revenue of the company, but then again, you're not fully responsible for all other departments, and you were doing your job, but you're also dependent on what others were doing. So not good as well. Then you go into individual contributor commission, but it's not always that successful because you need to consider new buyer journeys, if they are more complex or not. What is the time that you're paying that person? If they are closing a customer, what happens in the future? So it actually comes into the moment that sales did their job or wasn't a good selling. Are we taking the success of what the company has brought in certain months? So it's something that we still need to adjust and look to this new era to make it right by each of our account executives and other roles.
Yeah, great. And just I mean, where would you sit on that question there, Axel? Obviously, we've got, over 70% of people said, yes, it has changed, but are you kind of in agreement there? Do you think something has to shift in how we're thinking about sales and commission?
Been trying out different ways of solving this throughout the years. And it's funny that you should bring up this topic because we have been discussing this a lot in Oneflow lately. And it is a hot topic, you're right. There's a lot of kind of cool kids that has changed and gone away from commissions. But we have discussed and landed so far in that we believe in commission. We also believe in a base salary, of course. So with us, I think that you should have a solid base salary to give you the security you need, pay your bills. And then you should have a great commission scheme on top. So you can actually influence your own salary and through that also your life.
Yeah.
And I can see a lot of like intriguing things about removing that part in total. But in the end of the day, I don't believe it because people are competitive. People, want more. And I think that's one of the fun things about sales, that you can actually decide yourself how much you're going to earn. Yeah. You want to make 20,000 euros a month? Well, do it.
Yeah. Open road.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that.
It's my opinion in a year or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. And there's something, obviously having the base salary there, but you do need to measure your salespeople, right? So what is, I used to always think that the measure of a good salesperson is obviously rejection, right? So a bad salesperson gets told no 7 times out of 10, but a good person might get told no. Sorry, a bad salesperson will be told no 9 times out of 10. A good person will be told no 7 times out of 10. Like, we're being rejected a lot, but there are differences in how we're handling that. But and so I think the commission probably should stay because it is a if we're talking about from not just annoying to an advisor and having that flavor of always be closing, we do need to make these sales for the business. It is a sport there, and it's an open road for a salesperson to go off and make what they need to make. So when we're talking, so we spoke a lot about kind of commission pieces, right? And we spoke earlier about how not just customers and buyers are having a different view on sales from annoying to an advisor, but how the salespeople themselves are kind of viewing the profession. So if we're talking about retaining and leveraging top sales reps, because it's now respected and it even be called rock stars, right? So the SDR nations, these rev ops, it's all changing towards that kind of elevating the role of the SDR. There's some research right now that's saying that it's the best time ever to invest in a sales career. Sales is fun, critically important to scaling a business, financially lucrative to your point there, Axel, and can be intellectually stimulating. So, Axel, is that enough to retain the top sellers of this generation? Where do you land on that?
Well, it would be if it was one company out there and they wouldn't have options, then it would be enough. But you need to, stand out from the competition as well. And at the end of the day, my experience is that it's not the salary itself that will keep a good salesperson. There's a lot of different things that plays a part here, but culture, I would start with that. To use a really well-worn cliche that culture is strategy for breakfast. It's true. That's why it's a cliche. And have a good culture in the company. Whatever your culture should be, that's up to you. But invest in it at least. I think you should have a clear career path. Because salespeople often strive to develop and to learn more and to always become better than yesterday. And if you have a career path that kind of facilitates that and supports that, you will get some more loyalty, I believe. I think now in this day and age, in our industry at least, giving them a good tech stack is important, because that you will sell more if you have a good support, that you have a state-of-the-art CRM, that you have sales automation, that you have a good way of prospecting, that you have Oneflow or something similar to do the contract. And because that makes my job as a salesperson so much easier. If I were to quit here today and start as a salesperson at another company and they didn't have these tools, I would ask myself, what the hell did I do? Marketing, important. Support for marketing, yeah. Since, as you mentioned, Zara, we need to work super closely. Good leaders, not only good revenue leaders, but also people leaders that actually see the whole person and enables them to be themselves, their complete selves at work as well. And lastly, I think something I believe heavily in is a good brand. A brand that the sales reps actually can learn to love and feel connected to. That is something that is not easily swapped out. So it's inexpensive and not an easy fix, but it should definitely be on the list if you don't have that today, I think.
Yeah. Would I be wrong in kind of summarizing that up and saying, you said that if there's one company that's the way to do it, would it be kind of purpose? Like, is the new generation of salespeople? Yes, the industry is lucrative, it can be stimulating, but is there a purpose to it? Like you mentioned culture and whatever that might be, but could you encapsulate that and say if there's a purpose and if you're making the world a better place, then you can really grab hold of some good talent and actually drive them in that direction? Would you agree with that?
100%.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And the purpose doesn't have to be to save the world.
No.
I know a lot of companies try to tweak what they do into some way they save the world. We could say that we save the world by cutting down trees because we're paperless.
Yeah.
But we don't say that. You can create a purpose in so many ways that are more like relevant to the company. And I have a purpose, and people have different purposes. But my purpose is something that I can fulfill working here, right?
Yeah.
So definitely focus on that. When you have Generation Z and even millennials, purpose is key. So respect that people want more than just a salary. They would like to develop themselves, but also others, and hopefully put a mark on the universe in some sense.
No, I love that. I always call it, how do you make the world a better place? Even whatever that is, whether it's putting a smile on someone's face, right? But Zara, so as you manage a growing sales team, right? How do you manage that kind of career hungry or aspirational person that's coming in, giving them all the possibilities ahead of them without losing them to the career ladder? So what's the kind of and I've got a follow-up question, dependent on how you answer this. But yeah, how do you manage that kind of they've got all the passion in the world, and you put them in the sales, and they're in your team. How do you kind of manage that?
Yeah, I think it's the mindset of setting them to fail or succeed. For me, it's also how do we want them to start? One of the things that we do is, let's say, having ramp-up periods in which it will take in time so that the account executive, the sales rep, has a good pipeline, a good base of customers, so that, first of all, we are giving all the coaching, onboarding experience while the person is learning about what they are selling. So giving at least 3 months for that seller, for that person to learn about the company, the team, and then the product, of course. Then giving the opportunity to job shadow other colleagues, more experienced colleagues, having buddies, so that not only they have their managers, their leaders, but also someone that they can turn and ask something and understand where they can go next. So I think it's how you start new joiners and account executives and give already the notion of how good they can grow and up until which point his buddy, her buddy is growing and has reached certain levels. So it starts for me in that sense. And then it's celebrating the team's wins, individual wins across our department, across other departments. If you are starting with our company and you have already succeeded, not only in closing, but also understanding the product, making them experts in certain matters, making them the go-to person when we want to understand something about the product. And then after celebrating the wins is basically compensation. As you've mentioned, the career growth that Axel also spoke to. So it's a lot of points that we can bring into making those people more interested, not only into staying in your company, but also in your department, because then you have possibilities to stay in your company, but also growing into another department. Also giving that possibility, making sure that we understand where that person wants to grow. Is it in your department? Of course, you're going to lose a resource, but you don't want to lose that person from your company. If it's a good seller, or there's a possibility of growth in other departments, which we're going to see exceeding, we're going to be the first ones to make that happen and guide them, having mentorship programs, because sales is high speed. In high speed, you have not only your product, not only your company, but also career growth. So making sure that we are keeping and retaining people the best way that we can.
Yeah, thank you. And my follow-up question is actually, I think you kind of touched upon it a little bit, and I don't know who to ask this to, but who makes the best sales? Where do you find the best sales reps? Are they coming from we talked about the kind of career path. Is it coming from the marketing team and then leading into sales? That's kind of not necessarily a typical career path, but they can bring a lot of great insights because they've, from copywriting to whatever else it might be, or the other industries that you've seen. And I might ask this to you, Axel, just because of some of the other industries that you've been in. What characteristics makes a great salesperson?
The characteristics, or what the kind of jobs do they come from?
Yeah,
if you talk about characteristics, I think that marketing. I've never seen a salesperson coming from marketing to sales. I have never thought about that, but I've never seen that.
And I'll tell you what, I've got a reason why I think that is, because we aren't told that it's a career path. You're in marketing, and then you kind of stay in marketing. You might become a marketing manager, a marketing director. But I've worked at a company where some of the better salespeople came from marketing, and if you had an SDR could make a great marketeer. But as a career path, you kind of guide the SDR, account management, AE, or whatever it might be, right? Or if you're not great at sales, you might become an account manager because you're not necessarily a closer, but you're great at relationships. As an example. But it was just trying to get what your thoughts on whether it's characteristics or industries.
A few years ago, quite a few years ago, when we hired sales reps for bigger companies, and we hired sales reps, I would say that 80% of them just wanted a way into the company. So they had a plan on where to move on to. And we needed sales reps. So we, found people straight out of university wanting to work for these companies. They started as a salesperson, and then they evolve into something else. Now that has changed, as we've been speaking of this afternoon, that people would like to work in sales, not necessarily move into other parts of the business. But where do we see them come from? We know the skill sets they need to have, right? Some of them. Curiosity is, for instance, a thing that we see is super important. And you could have that within whatever profession you have been in. Coachability, you see, that is super important, that you're able to learn and willing to learn, and you can do that fast. And you need to have kind of a people thing.
You can't hate people.
You should like to talk to people and combine that curiosity with a true interest in people, because you are truly curious, which privately can be kind of annoying, but as a salesperson, being super curious and interested in people will give you a huge advantage, because you will never stop asking. As you said, Sarah, shut up and listen, and to leverage that, you need to ask the questions to make them talk, and you will get so much information. So I think that we have found so many great salespeople from all kinds of backgrounds, straight from school, but also people working from selling shoes. Or people doing tech sales all their lives and just work their way up. I don't think there's a right answer on where they come from position-wise, but I think the skill sets is super important. And if you find those skill sets, it doesn't matter what you have done before, because it's the personality and the ability to learn.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you for that. I wasn't trying to find the one answer to then find my next salesperson. It was just, I always find it insightful, whether it's the characteristics or whatever it might be. Just as this might be our last question here, as we've got 10 more minutes left. So we've gone from the evolution of a sales rep, right? From the annoying, we've kind of painted that picture of what, the annoying salesperson was, and how technologies then helps us, as well as from the seller side, but from the buyer side, to enable a more advisor relationship that we can have there. But we've also gone through COVID, right? So post-pandemic, what does this then look like as a obviously you're both sales in sales leadership roles, so you've got people underneath you, so that they still have to hit their targets monthly in Pipedrive's standpoint, or quarterly. But yeah, what's this going to look like? What does the future of sales look like as we move into kind of a post-COVID economy? And I'll put that to you there, Zara, please.
Yeah. So for us, I think post-pandemic, for example, doesn't change the approach that we have on customers, because even before the pandemic, every connection we had with customers was online. So we never did in-person meetings. We are currently covering a lot of other markets. So for example, my team is based in Lisbon, and we are covering EMEA as a whole, a little bit of Asia, and we also cover LATAM. So we just need to respect time zones, understand how markets work, so that we have the right approaches for customers. But we're going to keep it doing online. I think the biggest change we had, and it was an experience that we're going to take in, is by the fact that we are doing demonstrations and talking to customers online. One of the things that we've changed was the fact that we are doing everything with our camera on. Before the pandemic, we had the possibility, okay, camera off, camera on, depending on the customer, is he turning the camera on or off? And while we had the pandemic and now we're going into the post-pandemic, we decided, no, it actually works with the camera on. We see a difference between the connection with the customer. They feel more at ease, and they really like when we are showing our faces. Also shows emotions, right? That's how we connect with customers. So I'd say that is what we've learned from the pandemic that we are bringing into the future. But otherwise, Pipedrive has worked a lot online, and we kind of took everything in between. Maybe I'd say how we are approaching customers and the communication changed as well. But other than that, maybe Axel has a different experience than mine.
Yeah, I was going to kind of lean on that kind of hybrid piece, right? So yes, we've got used to this, and I think that's a really interesting point that you raised there about the camera being on, and people. It used to be like, I'm not putting my camera on. We're just going to have this call, and they actually might be doing something else. But in a world where 90% of your or 100% of your face-to-face time was over Zoom or whatever else. But as we move into this hybrid model, I mean, do you see some sales strategies shifting to, where does an in-person event sit in this, right? Or networking? Where does that kind of shift in the future look like now, Axel, do you think?
Well, I don't think there's anything to be said about selling after pandemic that hasn't been said, and you covered a lot of them now, Zara. But of course, there are some things are changing. And I remember before the pandemic, doing social stuff with customers, doing dinners, for instance, kind of disappeared because people would rather spend their time with their family. Also, there's some tax issues. But now, rumor has it that more people are more eager to interact more personally with their vendors as well.
Yeah. So
I think that trying to establish arenas to meet in person, maybe not necessarily like one customer to vendor at a dinner, but having in events, breakfast seminars, the kind of arenas to actually meet them and shake their hand the old-fashioned way, is something that has increased already, and it will probably increase quite a lot going forward, because we are human beings, we need that thing. And I would say also, when you have big customers, important customers, it wouldn't be stupid to try to meet them and arrange a physical meeting or a lunch or something like that. So it sounds kind of like old-fashioned, but I do believe that is coming back now in a larger extent because of the pandemic.
Yeah, and it's coming back probably because it's a principle, right? So it won't ever change. So we want to buy from people. Technology allows us to kind of scale that kind of interaction one to many, and we've just basically sped up a lot of what we kind of knew was already happening with Zoom and whatever what we have now. I'm actually just going to jump in. So thank you for that. I'm just going to jump to see if there's any questions in the chat. I did see some quite interesting pieces about commission. And so Angela mentioned that at some point they think that SMEs might remove commission structure entirely because it doesn't align with. I don't know what they mean by that, but what do you think about that? Could commission structure in certain industries or certain size of businesses be removed entirely?
It has been, but I never heard of a company doing that only for one segment. But of course, that might make sense.
It might be it might be the industry that they're based in. But it's so an SME business doing that.
I don't see why they should have different mechanisms than bigger businesses because it's about people, and you have the same people. So,
what do you think about? I'm just looking through the questions now, see if there's anything else.
So I think we have one from Emilia. That the feeling is that sales is very male dominated, and how can we attract more women to sales, and what are your companies doing to attract and retain more women? Thank you, Emilia. I think I can cover a little bit that one, and possibly Axel is also doing some actions in that sense.
Nice.
I agree with you. I think sales was really dominated by men, and the perception of women in sales wasn't that good. I can tell you that right now my team, 90% are women. So it's really impressive to see. And this has been a big shift that we had at Pipedrive, for example. We have a lot of core values. We have 6 core values that we really want to make sure that we follow them. And based on those core values, we also have the culture of the company. So it came from the culture of the company to show that not only sales, but other departments like product is also male dominant. And at Pipedrive, I can tell you that we have a 50-50, which other companies that is not the normal. So some of the things that we are doing is throughout the hiring process, we make sure everyone understands what they will get from the company, from the department itself, but it's also having simple things like videos about the company. What are the actions that we take? What are the celebrations that we have? And having a good HR department makes a lot of difference in all companies. So in sales in specific, I can tell you that all of those actions, and it started with the company and HR, have been shown in our department, and 90% of my team is female.
Yeah, I mean,
that is impressive.
That is impressive. I mean, I don't know if you had to beat those numbers, but Axel, but in terms of what do you think there? How can we? So is it? I guess it comes from the hiring process and actually giving it the forethought that it needs, right? You can't just be you've made the hires and then looking at the numbers. I think you actually have to put some proactive thought into it. And it sounds like Pipedrive are doing that. But what's your kind of thoughts on that there, Axel?
No, I totally agree with you, Zara. We don't have 90% women. We do have a good mix. And we also, I think we're 40% in tech now, if I remember correctly. Or sorry, I don't remember, but it's increasing, and we are focusing on it. Yeah. And as you say, it's all about the people team, and our people team is very, very focused on trying to even this out in all departments, and how to do it. We need to make them apply, because we don't source, we have them apply to us, and then what can you do? You can have a good brand, you can have videos, interviewing female salespeople. We do that. Other than that, we just have to really. Maybe try to market on arenas where female candidates will see us. I don't know. We haven't cracked that code yet, but we are focusing and we're trying to. So I will gladly reach out to you, Zara, and get some more pointers from you.
Yeah, it's a really good. It's a good point. And I'm not saying I've got an answer here, but if if marketing has been a predominantly, there's been a lot of females in the marketing roles, all departments. I kind of touched upon it earlier about that kind of as a career journey. Not a lot of people see sales from marketing because they think it's a dirty piece. But I think there's a hell of a lot of great talent in marketing, whether it's copywriting, whether it's thinking or asking questions to allow to write great copy. So that there could be a pool of talent sitting in marketing departments across the world there. But I'm going to share the screen again. So that has been from the annoying, the evolution of the sales rep from annoying to advisor. I'd like to say thank you to all that contributed to the polls. We found out that email is still quite heavily skewed to our audience on here. That could have been because it was largely a B2B audience and in the SaaS space. But our guests, Zara and Axel, actually thought it was the cold calling is not dead, so please don't hang up the phones. And then that the commission structure, may have seen there may be a new horizon for what the commission area looks like. So I just want to say thanks so much, Zara and Axel, for one, inviting me on this to do this for you guys. And we'll be sure to send this recording round afterwards. So anyone that, if you found this useful, you can share it with people on your team as well. But that's the evolution of the sales rep from annoying to advisor. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a nice